Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Susheela. I am the president of American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin, Medical Students, Residents, and Fellows section, and we're very excited to host this event in collaboration with American Medical Association on how to become a healthcare advocate through AMA. This event is sponsored by FindARotation. Before further ado, let me quickly introduce our organization, AAPI, otherwise called as American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin. Let me share my slides here. I hope all of you can see our slide. So American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin, this is our current MSRF board members. We have a very active MSRF group which producing a lot of initiatives in the community all around United States. AAPI was formed in 1982, over 41 years ago, and currently has over 140,000 members. Almost a third of US physicians are of Indian origin. And India is also the biggest provider of international medical graduates to the United States. 1 in 7 citizens in USA has been touched by a physician of Indian origin at some point in their life. And we are truly privileged to be a part of this community and serve this community. MSRF specifically has over 40,000 medical students, residents, and fellows. And we are an integral part of the parent AAPI and play a vital role in nurturing future leaders. Some of AAPI's contribution includes, we have 7 actively running free clinics in India. We have a large mentorship activity going around in MSRF community. We have various clinical opportunities as well as global projects, including global medical education, clean drinking water projects, South Asian heart disease project, TB free India, telemedicine, CPR programs, traumatic brain injury programs. AAPI was also the biggest contributor for COVID relief fund in US as well as in India. I'm very excited to introduce our upcoming national convention, the 41st annual convention. We also host a large research symposium during that time, which has a lot of prizes as well as travel grants for students interested in joining internationally and within US. The call for abstracts is open right now. As you can see in the screen, there is a jot form where we accept the submissions. We'll also provide the link for the abstract submission below. Some of our previous events were, we started off a wellness series this year, first talking about burnout and suicide prevention among residents and fellows. We featured the movie Do No Harm and had an active discussion with Dr. Pamela Wibble and Dr. Ziala Khayyam, also among our AAPI leaders. We have our own national journal called JAPI, which will publish the abstracts accepted for our research symposium. We also have awards for good manuscript submissions among the MSRF members to JAPI. We also have an ongoing research going on wellness and burnout discussion, and this is hosted by Albany Medical School. The same medical school also, the AAPI MSRF chapter is hosting a South Asian cardiovascular health panel discussion. And the Vanderbilt chapter is also doing a research project on organ donation sensitivities among South Asian members. We conducted our largest AAPI-MSRF International Virtual Research Symposium in December and provided an opportunity to present research internationally. We also partnered with USMLE Sarathi, which is a coaching institution for USMLE and residency application process. And during residency application time, we provided webinars, including match strategy and timeline, as well as pre-match programs. And we hosted our winter medical conference, which is comprising of young physician section and medical student residents and fellow section in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Four Seasons Hotel this February. And we also had a research symposium over there, which was well attended by students. We have a very active social media. Please follow us in AAPI, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at AAPI MSRF. And we'd love to hear from you, as well as we'll be posting about our future events in these platforms. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for this event, Dr. Kieran McAvoy. She's a geriatric fellow at the Medical College of Wisconsin and the current chair of AMA-RSF, representing over 60,000 residents and fellows from across the country. She also serves on Wisconsin Medical Society's board of directors, particularly healthcare policy is of interest for her, including physician wellness, scope of practice, and trainee workplace protection. After graduating in June, Kieran will be working in both private practice in post-acute and long-term care. In her free time, she enjoys running and spending time with her 3 rescued dogs and her daughter. I'm very privileged to call her a dear friend of mine, and I'd like to invite her to start her discussion. Thank you. Welcome to our event, How to be a Healthcare Advocate Through American Medical Association. I'm sorry if there is an echo from my end. I'm very excited to invite my friend and colleague, Dr. Kieran McAvoy, who is the chair of American Medical Association Residents and Fellow Section, to join us in discussing how AMA could help us to become a healthcare advocate. My name is Susheela. I am the president of American Association of Physicians in Medical Student Residents and Fellow Section. We are a large section of the physicians in the United States. Almost 30% of United States physicians are of Indian origin, and Medical Student Research and Fellow Section has around 40,000 students. So I'm very excited to collaborate, and our event is sponsored by FindARotation. I'd like to invite Dr. Chase Lecardio to give us a few words before we start our discussion.
Thank you, Ammu. Yes, my name is Chase DeMarco, and I'm the founder of FindARotation. And like many that are probably listening to this now or the replay later, rotations were difficult. It was hard to find them coming from a small Caribbean school too. And I decided that there has to be a better way. So FindARotation really puts the power back in the preceptor and student's hands. It allows them to schedule their own rotation, search for them by a variety of different methods. And we're happy to host this event, speaking to our IMG colleagues and with the AMA chair here for the, there's a MSFR, MRF, there's too many acronyms for me to remember. I'm terrible with them, I'm sorry. But really happy to be here, and I think we have an interesting, if not technical difficulty-ridden event that we'll have here.
Great, thank you, Chase. I'd like to invite Dr. Kieran McAvoy with a further delay to start our discussion.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Ammu, for inviting me and for having us. I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to share now. So let me get that up here. And Ammu, can you see my slides?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you for that kind introduction. So like Ammu said, I'm Kieran McAvoy. I'm the chair of the AMA's Resident and Fellow section. Just a little bit about me. I'm a PGY4 geriatrics fellow at the Medical College of Wisconsin, where I am set to actually be graduated at the end of June. So very excited. So going into our presentation, our agenda today, we will talk a little bit about advocacy as a whole in general and how to become a successful advocate. We will then talk about the American Medical Association, otherwise the AMA, and about how to get involved with the AMA, what the AMA can do for you, how membership matters. And then we will talk about how the AMA and advocacy come together through healthcare policy to create change from an advocacy standpoint. And then lastly, we'll end off with how you can get involved in the AMA, how you can get into leadership positions with our AMA RFS, with our AMA's IMG section as well, and then some upcoming events and opportunities for you. So starting off with advocacy tips in general. So we'll go from a stepwise approach with this. So the first step in how to become a successful advocate is obviously to find an issue in your community, in your state, nationally, that you are passionate about. This can be anywhere, anything, whether it's something that's happened to you in your own personal life, if it's something that's you've seen in terms of patient care, in terms of what you've read about in healthcare literature, what you've seen on the news. So first, finding an issue that really resonates with you and is an area that you are passionate about, because being an advocate does take time. It does take effort. So you really want to make sure that it's something that you can put that time into. The second step is to find a team and to find a mentor to help you. And we'll talk more about how the AMA can help you with that component. But oftentimes, whether you're a medical student or resident or a fellow, a lot of your team and a lot of your mentors can be, whether it's through your training program, somebody like an attending that can help you with this. It can even be your fellow colleagues. I know with my own personal story, which I'll share a couple slides in, you know, for my team, it was really members of the medical student section when I was involved there, and then now in the resident and fellow section of the AMA. So your team can compose of other physicians, medical students, and then as well as other members of your community. Then setting goals and building community relationships and overall developing a plan. So once you have an issue that you want to address and you have a team to do it with, the next step is to figure out, okay, how do we get from point A to point B? And what relationships, whether it's with legislators, whether it's with other organizations, what other relationships do we need to solidify in order to reach our goal? And then, of course, developing a plan of how you're going to accomplish it. Is it going to be through grassroots efforts? Is it going to be through drafting a policy, which we will also talk a little bit more about later? So then starting advocacy efforts. So of course, you can contact your state assembly members to develop a relationship. And one thing to keep in mind, they are not physicians or medical students like you. So they will need to know how laws in particular affect your patients and your practice. They won't know the intricacies that we've learned through our long, rigorous medical training. And even if there's not a particular, even if you don't bring up that particular issue off the bat, it's still really important to making sure that you are continually talking to your state assembly members and continuing to build that relationship and reminding them that you are a resource for them. You understand that they are not an expert in your field. That's you, right? So making sure that you are building that and asking to be a resource, not just on issues that you care about, but also on other issues in regards to healthcare. And then being aware of issues that are affecting you and your patients, staying informed on issues such as Title X, surprise billing, and scope of practice. And one way you can do that, I mean, you can always go online and subscribe to common news venues, but of course our AMA has an advocacy update that really does a wonderful job in doing all the heavy lifting there and doing all the search and providing you with a one streamlined source for you to get your advocacy updates through. And then of course there's more ways to advocate, whether if you don't have the time or the bandwidth to sit down and have these meetings, there's other ways that you can still support the common cause and help support your patients and your profession. So this can look like donating to political candidates that viewpoints align with yours, that are friends to our field. This can be done through giving to a political action committee. So oftentimes the American Medical Association, your state, even specialty societies have this political action arm of their organizations that are technically separate, that you can donate money to those, and then they will help put that money into places where it will help your field and your profession. And then volunteering on a political campaign is a really helpful way to know exactly what a candidate's stance on healthcare issues, what those stances are, and to also advise them as well. So kind of getting in there before they've even taken office to help lay the groundwork for a successful policy. And so that's one way in terms of supporting. And then the other bucket here is getting involved. So participating in events like White Coat Days at the state capitol and at the National Advocacy Conference. And our AMA actually just had our own advocacy conference last February, so that you can talk to your legislators and also to other physicians about your cause, making sure that you're building those connections and you're garnering support for an area that you're passionate in. Attending our AMA House of Delegates and helping to not only just see policymaking in action, but being involved in it as well. And we will, of course, talk more about what that looks like. And then running for political office. If you're not liking what your candidates and what your representatives are talking about, get a seat at the table and run for office. And as a physician, it can seem like a very overwhelming task, right? Because we, for our own careers, have spent all this training and all this schooling to become masters and experts in our field. So we just assume that it would take equal amounts of time to learn the craft of becoming a politician. And, we're smart folks. We're an educated bunch here. There's skills that we've learned in our training that can certainly translate over to being a successful candidate. And the AMA, through our political action committee, we have a candidate workshop and a campaign school that is an annual event that can help equip you and provide you with the skill set to be successful in a political office. And we have had physicians that have gone through that training that have been successful and now are legislators as well. So this is what we've talked about, and this slide really does a great job in demonstrating and showcasing that this is a cycle. This is not a linear from only point A to point B. This is something that is continual. Once you find an issue, you build your team, you set your goals, and you reach your goals. You'll then go back and see, okay, we've made this progress. Now what can we do to build upon our prior work and to continue to move forward? So then you will get back into finding another issue and continuing the cycle to ultimately making the field of medicine better for us, our profession, and our patients. So here are a couple personal photos of mine. So like I said, last February, I joined, it was myself, I brought my baby because I'm a young mom, and my colleagues, in joining the National Advocacy Conference, where I was able to meet with my representatives, my legislators, my state senator, or my state senators. I'm from Wisconsin, to talk about issues that are important, such as making sure we have funding and slots for graduate medical education, and talking about those important issues there. And physician advocacy, it really does work, and it is certainly more effective when we work together. This photo is actually from a couple years back from our Wisconsin Doctor Day, which is our state's lobbying day, where we get all the doctors and medical students involved in our Wisconsin Medical Society to our state's capital. And we wear our white coats, as you can see, and then we meet with our representatives there. So now let's talk about the American Medical Association, now that we have a basic groundwork about advocacy and ultimately what the AMA can do for you. So the AMA, we are the physician's powerful ally in patient care, and we represent both medical students as well as physicians with a unified voice to help confront public health crises, to remove obstacles that interfere with patient care, and to drive the future of medicine forward. So what can we then do for you? Why does it matter? Like, why should I join this group? So there's a couple different ways that our AMA will support you today and help protect your future practice and for your patients. So as a resident or fellow or even a medical student, the AMA's priority is to protecting your future career as a physician. And we provide leadership and training opportunities to help distinguish you and to help build your leadership portfolio. And of course, we'll talk about leadership opportunities down the line. Resources. We provide many resources to help navigate you through training, whether it's through the AMA's education hub or even through our AMA RFS. We're actually building a series on career planning. So we just had a webinar about talking about how to get involved in what private practice is and what that looks like. And then a couple months back, we actually had a similar one about how to get involved in medical education and what a career in medical education would look like. So building resources to help you through training. Access to wonderful resources like Headspace to promote physician wellness. And then, of course, JAMA and the JAMA network, which provides a lot of frontline research and primary research to help you on your career. Discounts, it provides lots of discounts from test prep to exercise and travel. And then connections, which I think is arguably one of the most important things on this list, to a passionate and active network of members, whether it's medical student members or all the way up to well-seasoned physicians in their career, to reach to and to ask for advice and guidance, whether you are trying to set up a primary private care practice, or if you're looking at contract negotiation and seeking advice on that. So this is in general what our AMA can do for you. It also helps take on the hard issues and topics that really matter to us trainees as a whole. So some of the most recent topics that our AMA has taken stances on and has been fighting on our behalf is for, of course, maternal health, especially in light of the Supreme Court decision for the Dobbs, confronting racism as a public health threat, defending Title IX and providing workforce protections, taking on LGBTQ+ health issues and advocacy, and of course, treating gun violence as a public health threat, which we have been seeing far too often in the news as of late. So the big picture is that the AMA represents the profession of medicine with a unified voice on issues that ultimately affect our practice, reducing administrative burnout, our burden, and excessive prior authorization to overall reduce the burnout from that standpoint. Medicare payment reform and ensuring proper reimbursement, supporting physician well-being and fighting burnout as a whole through both systemic solutions as well as individual as well. And then preventing the scope of practice expansion and ensuring that physicians remain leaders of the healthcare team. So now, how to get involved in policy and advocacy through the AMA. So why is it important? So the policy positions of our AMA and those directives, they reflect the will of the overall House of Delegates. That is essentially the representative democratic policymaking body of our AMA. Now, only the House of Delegates can create or change AMA policy. So essentially, we have our AMA House of Delegates. They create and make policy, and then it is up to our AMA's Board of Trustees then to enact that policy as situations come up. Approved policies and directives helps, like I said, inform our AMA's Board of Trustees of the actions and decisions. And then it also helps set the priorities in our AMA's advocacy agenda. So our AMA policy is often cited in courts, including the Supreme Court of the United States. It does carry a lot of weight. So how do you make this policy, and what exactly is a resolution? So we've kind of talked about this, but starting with an idea, have you ever thought or asked how our healthcare system can be improved by changing blank. How to get loan forgiveness or scholarship options, and should that be expanded for medical students? Or you think a certain issue is contributing to physician or medical student burnout, and you think that issue could be addressed by doing blank. Can blank be better incorporated into medical school curriculums nationwide? So first, you got to think of an idea about what you want to change and how you would change it. You would then, of course, like any good scholar, you would do your homework, you would do your background research, you would go and take a look at if there's primary research or literature out there on this issue, what's been done. Are there current proposed bills on this area that the AMA should be taking a stance on? So that is what the whereas clauses are in a resolution. That's essentially your rationale as building your background and your stance. Then at the bottom of a resolution are your results clauses. So this is the meat of our resolution. This is what would become AMA policy down the line. So this is exactly what you would want the AMA to do or not do. After this, you would then present your resolution to the House of Delegates, whether it would be through a section such as the resident fellow section or the IMG section or the medical student section. And then you would testify on behalf of your resolution and provide additional background, provide personal stories about how a particular issue has really impacted your ability for, say, patient care. Then it comes up to the House of Delegates to decide whether or not this is a good idea or if there are some other implications that maybe you didn't think of. So a resolution based off of the background research that you did, based off of the testimony from you and other members of our House, a resolution would then be decided to be adopted or not adopted or amended if folks thought that's a great idea, but we can make it even better by changing the verbiage here or there. So once a decision is formed, that resolution turns into policy then, and that policy helps direct the AMA through lobbying, to enact that policy. So I know this is a little bit of a busy slide, but essentially it talks about all the ways, all the different actions that our House of Delegates can do. So looking first at the left-hand side with the resolutions, like I said, there's various ways to bring forth a resolution to our House of Delegates. And it can be through your state medical society. So if your state has an annual meeting, or a lot of states now have a virtual rolling cycle of resolution and policy creating, you can certainly go through your state medical society or a specialty medical society to bring forth a resolution there, have it passed on their front, and then it would go to the overall House of Delegates. As I said earlier, there's the section. So we have lots of sections to help represent a very diverse House of Delegates, including the International Medical Graduate section, the Medical Student section, and the Resident Fellow section. So you can see in that yellow box all the sections highlighted there. And then, of course, we have other branches such as the military involved as well. So resolutions are one way to create that policy and get it towards our House of Delegates, where it would ultimately get voted on and passed. Of course, we also have reports written from our AMA. So we have various AMA councils that are select members of our AMA House of Delegates. So they're expert members on a variety of areas such as medical service, science, and public health that will meet as a smaller group to talk about issues and to create a report with then, of course, their recommendations in the form of those resolved clauses. And those reports can either go to the House to then be voted on as a whole, or can help guide our board, as this flowchart says as well. We also have a council on ethical and judicial affairs that talks more so about the ethics as it implies in those particular issues. And then we, of course, have special House of Delegates committees that are made on an ad hoc basis that can generate reports as well. Now, on these AMA councils and on that Ethical and Judicial Affairs Council, we have both a medical student representative and a resident and fellow representative as well on those that help represent our viewpoints as trainees there. And like I said before, then those resolve clauses, that proposed policy, would be brought forth to the House of Delegates. Folks would have the opportunity to testify on those resolutions, and then the House would ultimately decide if it should be adopted, if it should not be adopted, if it should be amended. And then, of course, there's always the option to refer. So say the medical student section, for instance, wrote a resolution, the House thought, oh, that's a great idea, but we'd really like one of our council, our group of experts, to take a really deep dive into this issue. It could then get referred to an AMA council that would then really take time and do even more possible research on that issue, and then generate a report for our House to review in the future. So now I've got a couple pictures to kind of put a little bit of context into what I was saying. So this is a photo of our AMA's House of Delegates. So as you can see, it is a huge group there. So we have a bunch of people that are voting on behalf of their specialty sections on states, et cetera, in the crowd. And then we have a speaker and vice speaker and our AMA board up there presiding over the meeting. And then testifying, like I said earlier as well, individuals have the opportunity to testify on behalf of resolutions and proposed policy to defend what they've written, or if they're not the author, then other folks can then come in and give their input as well. And then here's another photo of our House of Delegates. So I'm showing all the many diverse sections and specialty societies that sit and have voting rights in our House. So here's an example, and this is actually one that I had written back in the medical student section, so of how this process works. So back when I was a first-year medical student in 2015, wow, long time ago now, I read about the Anna Weston Act, and I learned about that there was a loophole for treating patients with eating disorders. And part of what stemmed this is that this individual that I went to high school with, his older sister unfortunately passed away from an eating disorder, and his parents had founded an organization to help fund research in regards to eating disorders. And they had shared about this, the Anna Weston Act, and that is what got me interested in this topic. So it was a personal story of mine through this guy I went to high school with. So got that idea that, wow, the AMA really should be supporting this legislation, this bill, that it seems like a really good idea to help improve access for patients. So I wrote a resolution on it. Now, for my idea, I actually went through the Wisconsin Medical Society, so that's what WMS is here. And I wrote that resolution. I testified at our Wisconsin Medical Society's annual meeting, and their assembly, their version of their House of Delegates decided to pass this policy at their meeting. So that was back in 2016 now. So at the next AMA meeting, the Wisconsin Medical Society, because it then became Wisconsin Medical Society policy, brought forth that resolution to the AMA's House of Delegates. And it was passed to become official AMA policy. And at that same meeting, I had also brought this toward the medical student section so that it could become their internal policy as well, so that during this House of Delegates, that section would be able to support this resolution. Then, after it became official AMA policy, the AMA utilized lobby, media, their overall influence to support eating disorder parity legislation. And fortunately, back in 2016, the Mental Health Reform Act of 2016, it included provisions of the Anna Weston Act, and that was ultimately signed into law in December of 2016 as a component of the 21st Century Cures Act. So this is kind of just the general timeline of how an idea can then become policy that can then become law. And just a couple other pictures to go with it. So this was one of the news releases from the AMA back then about our policy that had passed back in June. And then this is the Anna Weston Act when it, like I said, the provisions of that passed. And this is Anna Weston's mom, Kitty. And Anna Weston, unfortunately, also passed away from complications of anorexia. So meeting former President Barack Obama. And this is the family that I was alluding to, the one that I went to high school with that started a foundation about this issue, and ultimately who inspired me to write this resolution. And then that's me from 2015, 2016, testifying at the Wisconsin Medical Society's annual meeting on behalf of this policy. So I was reading a testimony that I'd written and on behalf of this, and essentially giving my rationale why the Wisconsin Medical Society should be active and support this. Now going on to leadership opportunities and how you can get involved in this process through the AMA. So we have many national leadership opportunities, and these are specifically through our resident fellows section, but of course there are many more through the medical student section as well as through the IMG section as well. So we have essentially a really nice leadership pipeline that you can get involved in, that you can continue to build your leadership skill set and learn how to run organizations, how to run committees from a national level. So the first step of this is essentially getting involved in our resident fellow section, whether it's as a delegate for our own section to vote on behalf of your program or your specialty at our own RFS resident fellow section meeting. The next segue for leadership would be to join one of our standing committees. And our standing committees mirror closely those AMA councils that I was talking about earlier in my presentation. So you can join first as a regular committee member, giving input on an area that you're interested in, whether it's medical education or public health, et cetera, to really learn about how these committees work, to get a really strong sense of how this organization's run and how this policy making process works. Then once you have your feet wet, you have some experience, it then becomes very natural to apply to higher positions in our AMA and in our resident fellow section. So we have a governing council that oversees our resident fellow section, of which I'm the current chair of. So once you're on a standing committee or you've been a delegate in our section for some time, you can have an official election for that position. So you would give a speech in front of our assembly, and you would be voted in to one of those positions. And of course, outside of our resident fellow section, we have representation in other facets of our AMA. So we have a board of trustee resident member or fellow member. We have, like I said, representation on each of those AMA councils, a resident member. We also have the honor to appoint trainees to external organizations such as ACGME, NRMP, and BME as well. Those appointments are usually made by our AMA's resident fellow section governing council. So folks will put in applications for those, and then our governing council will look at those applications, discuss each of those candidates, and put a ranked list going forward. The AMA has a foundation board, and that board has a resident fellow representative on there as well. So they help oversee the foundation, talk about scholarship opportunities, ways to raise funds for scholarships. AMPAC, what we talked about, the political action arm of our AMA, we have representation on that as well, discussing political candidates, their views, how it impacts medicine, who they should donate money, whose campaigns they should donate money for. And then of course, other committees such as the Advisory Committee on LGBTQ+ issues, Minority Affairs section, Governing Council resident member, Women Physicians section, Governing Council member. So a variety of ways to build and gradually increase your leadership experience, because I know it can seem very overwhelming to get into these leadership positions and to feel that you are qualified for those. So upcoming leadership opportunities. So we have our AMA RFS meeting, and I have another slide on this as well. It's coming up in June. So at that meeting, we will be electing members of our governing council, such as our vice chair, our speaker, or vice speaker, our official delegate and alternate delegate. So they are the ones that represent the entire AMA RFS in the House of Delegates, and of course our member at large. So those applications are due April 17th. In addition to those applications, we also will have an opportunity to submit resolutions. So going through that process, like I explained, to our AMA resident fellows section as well. So residents, fellows can submit resolutions for our upcoming meeting, also due on April 17th. And it's important, if you have the opportunity to come to our meeting, to make sure that you have voting rights in our AMA RFS, and to make sure that you are registered as a delegate. So make sure that you can either contact me directly, or you can contact somebody from your specialty or state society about how can I get credentialed as a delegate for the upcoming AMA RFS meeting. And again, like I said, aside from our AMA RFS, we also have an AMA medical student section that folks can get involved in, as well as an international medical graduate section as well. So those leadership opportunities that I outlined for the AMA RFS, a lot of those are paralleled in these other sections. So if you're a medical student section, you of course can get involved in their section. If you are an IMG, you can get involved in the IMG section. And they, of course, have their own governing council positions for that section and their own other leadership opportunities as well. Okay, so a couple save the dates. So our House of Delegates annual meeting is going to be this upcoming June. So from June 9th to the 14th, and it will be in person in Chicago, the Windy City, Chicago. So that is that meeting. And of course, there is also our AMA RFS meeting in particular. So that is Friday, June 9th. So that's that first day of that meeting. The RFS will meet, and then in the evening, we'll start our AMA House of Delegates meeting. So if you are a resident or fellow, and like I said, you're able to go to this meeting, let's make sure that you're credentialed. Feel free to email the RFS at AMA-ASSN.org to make sure that you are credentialed. And we need to hear from you by May 4th for that part. You can also, if you are a medical student or if you're interested in the IMG section, you can also email that email as well, and we'll just make sure that we forward your question to the correct section, because I'm representing the AMA RFS, but I still want to make sure that even if you are involved in a different section, that we're helping transmit your question to the correct area. And even because if this would be your first meeting, you wouldn't be credentialed for the big house, as we call it, the big AMA House of Delegate. But I still think it's important for you to go and to see the policymaking process. You can still testify at reference committee hearings, so you can give your general inputs on resolutions brought forward by various specialty societies and states and sections. The only thing that you wouldn't be able to do is to sit in the big House of Delegates and vote on those, or testify in the big House of Delegates once the RefCom reports are done. But it would still be a very worthwhile process for you if you're able to come. And yeah, I have a couple photos from our meeting in Hawaii, so I'm sorry this is not Honolulu and this is Chicago. And we do get to meet in fun areas and to network and meet others, which is how I've had the absolute pleasure of meeting Ammu a couple years back now. I think we've originally met. So here are a list of resources, and this is something I certainly can make sure I send out to attendees of our presentation as well. And now I am open to answering any questions. I will stop sharing my slides though, so I can see. So,
thank you, Kieran. That was very comprehensive, very step-by-step approach on how to get involved with AMA. Thank you so much for that. I do have some questions from the chat. So Priyanka Kolli, she's one of our board members. She had asked how to incorporate RP into AMA for our advocacy. That means how can we collaborate with AMA?
That's a really good question. So, there's a couple different ways. So AAPI has representation in our AMA, and they have a delegate. Ammu, I'm not sure if you know who their specific delegate is, so you can provide that information for the group. But certainly through your delegate, making sure you're talking to them about issues that are coming up so that they can represent you and your organization within our AMA. So that's one way. And of course, events such as this, I think that's also some of the power of being involved in the AMA is that you can really network with other sections within. So any areas that align, say, with the AMA RFS or in various other sections as well. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think I agreed. I was surprised when I came to every time there was separate RP advocacy too. There were RP members from the parent RP, also from the MSRF. There is a position, so we can go for it. So my experience with AMA has been since 2014. So I had joined AMA through Massachusetts Medical Society. So I do know that you need somebody to endorse you to join AMA as a leader, as like a delegate. I do have the next question. Does the AMA have a mentorship and section for developing leadership skills? This is asked by Dr. Zishan Mansouri, who's our president-elect.
Oh, wonderful. Well, so nice to meet you. So yes, we do have a lot of mentorship in general, not a specific mentorship section, but each of these subsections that I was talking about, so say the resident fellow section, for instance, we provide mentorship at the meetings themselves as well as offline. So we have a lot of group chats where individuals can join and ask questions about how to get involved in this standing committee or how to get involved in this area. So a lot of the mentorship opportunities provided are organic through that. And then of course at our actual annual and even at our interim meeting, we had a mentorship event. It was with the medical student section, the resident fellow section, and the young physician section, where we all got to meet together. It was a little cocktail hour where you really got to network and meet with these other sections and talk about ideas and other things as well. So a lot of the opportunities are organic mentorship, but of course there are a little bit more formal as well. And of course, if you are looking for a particular leadership opportunity or area that you're interested in, again, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy. If I don't have the answer, I know somebody that does have the answer, and I'm happy to connect you.
Excellent. Our next question is with Dr. Jaswant Kintada. He's our secretary of our MSRF board. So he mentions that what are some of the service efforts that AMA is currently focusing on? Back when I was in med school, my medical chapter collaborated with AMA and BCMS in San Antonio on hard hats for kids, focusing on bike safety, as well as Narcan training with the AMG system.
Okay, thank you for that question. It's so nice to meet you. So a couple of the service arms of the AMA, you know, like I said, there's the AMA Foundation as well. They do a lot of the service arms there. So providing scholarships. They have an event. It's usually at the annual meeting, and I can get more information about whether it's happening at this one. And I believe that's in collaboration with the Minority Affairs section, where they've reach out to local area schools and talk about getting involved in medicine. So that's one more local service events. There's been a variety that I've been involved with throughout my time in the AMA. When I was in the medical student section, I was actually they're divided into regions, and I was the Region 2 Community Service Chair. And in that position, I helped organize a medication take-back event that occurred also at the annual meeting. I've helped work with other community service chairs to provide essentially like a toolkit, like a script about what medical schools across the country could do in terms of service events. So one was focused on Narcan training and kits, providing that to the local community, which is one that I know at my medical school we participated in as well. So there's a lot of different areas of service that our AMA is involved in, and it really varies based off of what section you're involved. But of course, if you have, if you have ideas, we'd love to hear from you and love to hear about them. I really like, so yeah, you had mentioned the Narcan training. That's something we've done in the past. And I'm sure there's been bike safety. I'm not entirely sure specifically what, but I love that idea as well.
Great, thank you. So I have a question. So from our RP initiatives, we do have some things we are focusing on, such as South Asian heart disease panel, as well as like organ donation attitudes in South Asian population, like very focused on seeing what's the attitude is and how we can be very sensitive to those, sentiments. So if RP is bringing about some resolution, focusing on physicians of Indian origin and some of the efforts they're, facing in the healthcare system, can we write it up as a resolution and bring it to the AMA?
Oh, absolutely. So you can bring any idea to the AMA. One thing I would first look at is what our existing policy is, because sometimes you don't need a resolution because our policy already covers it. So that's one thing I would recommend first. So part of the resources that I had on my slide, and again, we will share those with you, and you can make sure those are disseminated. But is this policy finder? It's the AMA Policy Finder. And you can search any topic in there to see what our current policy is. And it's always a good idea to do that first, because sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have sufficient AMA policy. If we have sufficient AMA policy on it, at that point, what you can do is then reach out to, say, the Resident Fellows Section Governing Council, or reach out specifically to a member of the AMA's Board of Trustees and ask for an update. Say, hey, this is an area our organization is very passionate about. What's the AMA doing on this front? Or could the AMA, maybe even giving them a directive, could the AMA do X, Y, Z about it? If they're not able to act on existing policy, then that gives you the answer. Then it's a good idea to write a resolution and see what the rest of the House of Delegates thinks about it. And thank you so much for putting that in the chat.
Yeah, we do have the policies finder there. Great. I do have, I think, any more questions from the chat section? Do we have a research symposium coming up too? That's my understanding that each year AMA research symposium.
Yeah, so we had the AMA Research Challenge. It was actually virtual to help improve overall participation in, and the grand prize was actually $10,000, so a hefty amount there. So the annual AMA Research Symposium is something, Research Challenge, excuse me, is something that's been ongoing. It used to be an in-person symposium, and thank you again for, it's in the chat if folks want to click on that link and read more about it. But yeah, it's an annual research challenge that individuals can submit research to try to win that really coveted grand prize there, and to also help disseminate your research and get a publication under your belt as well. It used to be an in-person symposium, and that's something that I think we're exploring whether or not it should be in person again in the future. But for now, it's at least virtual, and I encourage folks to submit abstracts to that as well.
Great. And Kieran, one of the other questions I had is, I've seen people who are very passionate about policy and advocacy in AMA. Some people who make it as like a long career, even though they'll try to do a master's in policy making and very active in that. So what are some of the long-term career involvement that students can do once they get really a taste of this advocacy?
So you're right. Some folks get really involved, and it motivates them to pursue, further advanced degrees, such as like a master's of public health, for instance. So that's certainly one way that you can continue to build upon your passion for healthcare policy. There's also, for residents and fellows, we're seeing more fellowships, healthcare policy fellowships in particular, that individuals will get involved in and apply to and be a part of, that allows you to really hone in those skill sets as well. And then, of course, like I spoke about, getting in, you can always, aside from the AMA, getting involved in specialty and state societies as well. There's also, of course, local leadership opportunities through those as too. For me, I'm actually on the board of directors as well for the Wisconsin Medical Society and part of their executive committee. So aside from being involved in the AMA nationally, I'm also very involved in my state society. So I encourage individuals that want to continue to build upon these leadership skill sets to look toward their state's medical society, as well as specialty societies as well. So I'm involved with ACP as well as AGS. Since I'm internal medicine geriatrics.
Wonderful. So I think those are the questions I'm seeing in the chat. I was told that our national president, he was in our audience, and I had invited him to just join us to speak his 3 words if he has time, and I think he just joined us.
Oh,
Hi,
Yeah,
Dr.
hi.
Kolli. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ammu and Kieran, for doing this amazing advocacy educational webinar for MSRF delegates of AAPI. And we are deeply connected with the AMA through our delegate system, participating in our AMA activities. And Dr. Bhushan Pandya has been our delegate for a few years. And prior to that, Dr. Vijay Appareddy and Dr. Sunita Kanmuri have participated very actively in AMA. And we have IMG section contestant in our team, and we want them to be deeply involved. My advice and my suggestion with all the medical student residents to get involved with AMA early in their career so they can become leaders and advocate for change that's best for the patient healthcare and doctors and physicians' autonomy, which is a major challenge that we're all facing on a daily basis. And so I applaud you for doing this. And this year, MSRF section has been a very dynamic, a very active part of the organization. I'm really happy to see that the growth and the autonomy and the independent way they're functioning, bringing their own sponsors, activities, and the speakers. And we're looking forward to having them all at API convention in Philadelphia coming up in a couple of months in July. So we invited the AMA president-elect and the BOT chair-elect for the AMA of AMA to join at the convention as well. So we want to be integrated with API and AMA advocacies so we can make our impact much more wide and deep. So thank you. Thank you for doing all you do.
Thank you for
very
those
much.
kind words. And I'm glad to hear Dr. Jesse Ehrenfeld, another, person from Wisconsin, is coming to your meeting. That's great to hear.
Thank you. For some reason, my camera is not showing. Let me join on the phone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kolli. That was very kind of you. We are
Right.
very fortunate that we get mentored by a huge section of parent API. They really nurture us and encourage us in our activities. And we do have, as Dr. Kolli mentioned, our national convention coming up in July. I think it's very close to the convention in Chicago, and then we have the API convention in July. And this will be hosted by the entire API members, including young physicians, medical student resident fellows, and the parent API. Thank you, Dr. Kolli, for finally joining.
Yeah, for some reason my computer camera didn't connect, but thank you. And again, have a great rest of the conference, and hope to see you all at Philadelphia. It's a great city and very close to a lot of people training in that area and surrounding areas, and as well as rest of the area. Also, rest of the country is very accessible through good connections there. So looking forward to doing, and also especially for medical students, we made a special attempt to bring them by lowering the registration fee to $199. First time ever, we separated residents and fellows and the medical student to give a better deal for them because they're not earning yet, but we want to encourage them to be there as they are the future leaders of API. So please take advantage and please register quickly. And also, if you know anybody in the Philadelphia area, different schools, pick up some people from there to take lead and connect them all to your groups. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. Okay. So that's, I think, pretty much the discussion. I think you covered very well. I'm very excited. I will definitely spread the word about the policy resolution deadline coming up to see if we can bring up some policies or get more involved in advocacy. I actually found one more question in the chat box. So here's Shan Medical. I'm a member of AMA non-US IMG. I'll be graduating and joining as hospitalist. How can I get involved with the IMG section of AMA?
That is such a good question, and congratulations. That's so wonderful to hear that you're graduating. So like I said, you can certainly reach out to any of the sections that you are interested in. We can make sure we get in our chat the contact information for the IMG section as well. Otherwise, if you want to reach out to me directly, I can connect you to the staff person for IMG. But yeah, you just need to contact them, let them know, hey, I'm coming. I hope you're able to come to the upcoming annual meeting in Chicago, since the IMG section will be meeting there as well. And that's a good place to start building those connections, meeting people, and talking about how you can get involved with leadership opportunities in IMG. So congrats.
So yeah, I'm a IMG myself, so I can add to it. So I'm currently a delegate from Illinois State, as well as a member of IMG. And I know that IMG is a very robust, active member in AAPI. Every June they have elections, they select their governing council, and throughout the year they bring up initiatives and help with the issues involving the IMG section. So I would encourage you to come to the meeting and get involved with the IMG board. Before further ado, I do have a few slides I just wanted to share regarding the RP and our upcoming events. As Dr. Kolli was mentioning, I'm just going to try to see if I can share it. I think, let me ask if our sponsor, Chase, is able to make my screen shareable.
I can do that as soon as I see it. I don't see it yet.
It shows. Okay, I'm going to share it with you. Chase, if you can just share it, I'll just go through it.
I wanted to try this screen, so.
Okay, I think
That's so great.
I want to invite you everyone for upcoming convention. We also have our research symposium coming up for students who are interested in presenting. So I think we have put the link in our chat box regarding how to submit for this submission. And I think that would be, I don't think have anything more to add unless Kieran has anything.
Just thank you so much, Ammu, for the opportunity to address your organization. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all get involved in our AMA. And please don't hesitate to reach out to either of us if you have questions or concerns. We want to see you involved.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good rest of the day.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.